Hi, this is the History of Israel podcast, an Each My Own Beat podcast. Over the coming weeks, months, and years, we'll be discussing the history of Israel. This is not a podcast to say which side is right, which side is wrong. It's not a podcast to talk about the war which is happening in Palestine. It's just simply the history of Israel.
Welcome back to the History of Israel, episode 16, the Maccabean Revolt. According to the Maccabees, 1, 2, and Josephias, the Seleucid Emperor Anastasius IV moved to assert strict control over the Seleucid satrapy of the Colli, Syria, and Phoenicia. After a successful invasion of the Potomac Egypt, it was turned back to the intervention of the Roman Empire. He sacked Jerusalem and the Temple, suppressing Jewish and Samaritan religious and cultural observances, and imposed Hellenistic practices. Anastasius' actions enraged the elites, but also the rural population, who had remained mostly untouched by Hellenism. In 167 BCE, Matthias, a Hasmonean lineage Jewish priest, killed a Jew in the hometown of Modin, who stepped forward to offer sacrifice to the Greek gods. He then killed a Seleucid official who offered the sacrifice. According to 1 Maccabees, he declared, "Let everyone who is zealous for the law and supports the covenant come out with me," and fled with his sons and followers to the wilderness of Judea. These events signaled the start of the Maccabean Revolt. When Matthias died, his son Judas Maccabeus took over as leader of the revolt. He used guerrilla tactics to defeat several small Seleucid armies, with Anastasius IV was fighting a war in the east. The conflict was heavily religiously charged because, in order to distinguish himself from their Jewish opponents, the Maccabees presented themselves as radical Jews and carried out large-scale forced circumcisions. Judas eventually succeeded in capturing Jerusalem and purifying the alleged desecrated temple. This event commemorated by the Jewish festival of Hanukkah. The Maccabean cause was aided further in 164 BCE when Anastasius IV died and his generals fought over guardianship of his young son Anastasius V. This turmoil ended with Anastasius IV's nephew, Demetrius I, returned from exile in Rome, deposed Anastasius V, and ascended to the Seleucid throne. Demetrius continued the war against the Maccabees and backed their Jewish opponents. Around this time, Judas was able to make a treaty with the Romans. Around 161 BCE, a Roman-Jewish treaty was signed. In 160 BCE, the Seleucid general Bacchides defeated the Maccabees at the Battle of Alessa in 160 BCE. Judas' death during the battle dealt a blow to the rebels. After Judas died, his brother, Jonathan Appius, took over as leader of the revolt. He benefited from another internal Seleucid struggle between Demetrius I Soter and the usurper Alexander Balas. Both turned to Jonathan, attempting to win him over with concessions. And Alexander Balas even elevated him to the position of high priest. Alexander Balas was eventually able to assert himself, but he was quickly defeated by Demetrius' son, Demetrius II. The battle of the throne was now between him and the general Didotius Thyroin, which strengthened Jonathan's position even more. This did not change when Typhon was able to capture and murder Jonathan and Acre through treachery. In 142 BCE, Simon Thassi, the last Matthias' son, took over the rebellion leader and the high priest. He was eventually successful in destroying Acre, fortified complex in Jerusalem that was the last symbol of the Seleucid rule in Judea.
This has been the History of Israel podcast. Check back every Wednesday for new episodes. We're available on Apple, iTunes, Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify. We also have each episode streaming on YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. We're available on eattomyownbeat.com as well as the History of Israel podcast on Facebook.